Last year, we couldn't go 5 seconds of television without getting one of these thrown in our face. Last year, we couldn't watch 5 minutes of League Pass without getting one of these thrown in our face. They couldn't go to commercial break without throwing one of these in our face.
Last year, you couldn't escape it. 5 seconds of television, 5 minutes of League Pass, even a single commercial break. And the WNBA was everywhere. Blasted in your face as the next big thing, hyped like the league was finally breaking through into the mainstream. But fast forward just one season and that wall-to-wall promotion has turned into a deafening silence because the very corporate giants that built the stage, Disney with ESPN and ABC, Amazon with its billion-dollar streaming push, are suddenly backing away, whispering doubts that have exploded into full-blown alarm bells. And here's the nightmare. If those partners scale back or walk away, the WNBA isn't just losing exposure, it's losing the lifeline that pays its bills, fills its arenas, and keeps its name alive in sports media. And the scary part is simple. Without Caitlin Clark to carry the entire league on her back, without those corporations pouring in money, commercials, and hype, the WNBA isn't just struggling, it's staring straight at survival mode. And the question nobody inside the league wants to say out loud is this: can women's basketball really survive without its one superstar and the corporate machine behind her?
Caitlin Clark! These companies wipe their hands of the WNBA. They're not gonna put time, they're not gonna put effort, they're not gonna put money.
For decades, every major sports league has lived and died by one thing: broadcast rights. The NFL, the NBA, even Major League Baseball, all of them rake in billions, not just because people love the game, but because networks know fans will tune in no matter what. That TV money doesn't just pay players. It fuels sponsorships, drives marketing, and guarantees the league stays everywhere in front of you. But the WNBA has always been different, leaning heavily on Disney's ESPN and ABC to push games onto casual audiences, while Amazon jumped in with streaming to look like the modern savior. And for a moment, it seemed to work. The league finally got attention, especially when Caitlin Clark stormed onto the scene, sending ratings and jersey sales into uncharted territory. ESPN plastered her highlights on First Take, ticket prices soared, and for the first time, it felt like the WNBA had cracked into the mainstream. But here's the reality check. It wasn't league-wide growth, it was Clark mania. And the moment she went down with her season-ending injury, the foundation started to crumble. Ratings nosedived, corporate ads vanished, and suddenly, all that talk of momentum was exposed for what it really was: a bubble tied to a single player.
Nike commercial, other than a Gatorade commercial. How many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one.
When Caitlin Clark was healthy, the WNBA looked unstoppable, games crossing 1 million viewers, jersey sales through the roof, and tickets so hot, fans were paying NFL-level prices just to be in the building. But the second she went down, those numbers collapsed like a house of cards. Matchups that once cracked primetime ratings barely pulled a few 100,000. ESPN, which had been dedicating entire segments to Clark, suddenly treated the rest of the league like background noise. Corporate sponsors noticed immediately. CarMax, State Farm, Gatorade, all the big names that had been running nonstop campaigns suddenly went quiet, pulling their ads or shelving WNBA stars altogether. Fans who used to laugh about memorizing those commercials word for word now can't remember the last time they even saw one. And that silence isn't just awkward, it's devastating. Because commercials aren't filler, they're proof that corporations see value. No ads means no faith, and no faith means no money. Without Clark in the spotlight, the hype evaporated overnight, exposing just how fragile the WNBA's foundation really island.
That CarMax commercial, they ran that all Caitlin Clark's senior year at Iowa. They ran that all through the draft. They ran that all through last year. They ran that all through this year's draft, but we haven't seen it since Caitlin Clark has been down.
The collapse showed up in the most brutal place of all: ticket sales. Just months ago, Indiana Fever games were the hottest ticket in women's basketball, seats selling for $200, even $250, as fans scrambled just to catch a glimpse of Clark in person. The resale market was booming, something the WNBA hadn't seen in years. But when the injury news finally hit, that frenzy disappeared overnight. Average ticket prices dropped nearly 30%, falling to just over $60 a seat, and desperate resellers started unloading tickets at fire sale prices, taking massive losses just to get rid of them. Imagine paying hundreds for a lower bowl seat and being forced to dump it for pocket change. That's the level of collapse we're talking about. And it wasn't just about money. Empty arenas meant dead energy, fewer jersey sales, fewer concessions, and local businesses around those stadiums losing game day traffic. The WNBA knew this was coming. That's why they delayed announcing Clark's season-ending injury as long as possible. Every extra day of hype meant more ticket revenue before fans realized the main attraction was gone. It was pure damage control, a business move to squeeze out short-term gains, but it also exposed just how desperate and dependent the league had become.
WNBA players are back to being ignored by corporations and companies. They're back to being in obscurity. With Caitlin Clark, rising tide lifts all boats, and she was the tide that lifted them all.
And that's where the trust completely shattered, because once fans realized the league had dragged its feet on announcing Clark's injury, many felt played like their loyalty was just another revenue stream to be milked. Season ticket holders who thought they were buying into a historic ride suddenly saw their investment crumble. Families who paid top dollar expecting to see Clark live in action walked into arenas filled with disappointment and empty seats. Local businesses that had stocked up for packed game days were left with losses, and resellers who bought in bulk took the hardest hit, losing thousands overnight. The fallout wasn't just financial, it was emotional. WNBA diehards started questioning whether the league was honest with them at all, and networks noticed. For ESPN and Amazon, credibility is everything, and the last thing they want is to be tied to a product accused of misleading its own fans. Advertisers don't want drama, they want stability. And if the WNBA can't deliver that, then why would billion-dollar corporations keep pouring money into a league that feels one injury away from implosion? That's the dangerous perception now. Without Clark, the WNBA isn't just struggling for relevance. It's fighting to convince anyone to believe in it at all.
Let's about some of these ratings real quick. Fever Mercury from last Tuesday, 310,000. Fever Mystics from last Sunday, 270,000. The Fever Mystics on NBA TV got outdrew by women's college volleyball on the Big Ten Network. Oh boy. Wing Sparks, the game right after, 130,000. And the finale between the Sky and the Aces did 90,000 views.
Television ratings tell the story clearer than anything else because numbers don't lie. When Clark was on the court, Fever games broke through the ceiling over 1 million viewers, outdrawing Major League Baseball on certain nights, highlights going viral, social media buzzing nonstop. But the moment she was sidelined, the numbers cratered. Games that once hit 7 figures dropped into the 200,000 or 300,000 range, with some matchups barely cracking 6 digits. Women's college volleyball on the Big Ten Network was suddenly pulling better numbers than the WNBA on ESPN. Even NBA TV broadcasts that Clark had elevated to 500,000 viewers sank to half that without her. And here's the harsh truth. No network executive is going to justify primetime slots for games that can't compete. Not when the NFL, NBA, or even MLS can guarantee triple or quadruple those numbers. For Disney, that's a nightmare scenario, because ESPN thrives on ratings. Every underperforming WNBA broadcast means advertisers lose money, and advertisers don't stick around when they're bleeding cash. For Amazon, it's just as bad. Live sports are supposed to be streaming gold, the one type of content people can't skip or binge later. But the WNBA doesn't deliver steady numbers, it delivers Clark numbers. And when she's gone, the whole house collapses.
Goes into why they held off so long in announcing Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, because they knew people would stop showing up. They knew the excitement and the interest would wind down.
And that inconsistency is what terrifies the networks, because no billion-dollar deal can survive on one player's shoulders. Disney and Amazon signed on thinking they were investing in an entire league, not a one-woman show. And now the data proves what insiders feared: the WNBA's growth isn't league-wide, it's Clark-centric. When she's in, you've got packed arenas, buzzing social feeds, and advertisers lining up to plaster their brands on every highlight. When she's out, the lights dim, the hype vanishes, and the money dries up instantly. That's not a business model, that's a gamble, and corporations don't gamble, they calculate. For Disney, it's about whether ESPN can keep justifying the airtime when every non-Clark game drags down the network's bottom line. For Amazon, it's about whether pouring millions into rights fees is worth it when the product can't consistently deliver eyeballs. The truth is brutal but obvious. Without Clark, the league's momentum looks less like a breakthrough and more like a mirage, and networks are already asking themselves the hardest question: why should they keep paying premium prices for ratings that collapse the moment one player disappears? And the fallout doesn't stop at ratings or ticket sales. It cuts straight into sponsorships, the lifeblood that tells the world whether a league really matters. Last season, you couldn't flip on ESPN without seeing CarMax with Aja Wilson, State Farm with Sabrina Ionescu, or Sue Bird in every other promo. And those ads did more than sell products, they made the WNBA feel mainstream. But now, those campaigns have gone silent. CarMax hasn't rolled out a new WNBA spot, State Farm barely acknowledges the league, and the Paige Buchers commercial that should have been blasted on ABC during big-time events is buried on League Pass streams that only diehards ever see. That's containment, not growth. Sponsors aren't betting on the league anymore, they were betting on Clark's buzz, and without her on the court, they're pulling their money back fast. And this is the domino effect. Disney and Amazon are watching closely because if sponsors aren't willing to spend, networks have no incentive to keep giving away prime real estate. Airing games without ad revenue isn't just unprofitable, it's financial suicide. And in the world of corporate sports, once the sponsors vanish, the networks won't be far behind, leaving the WNBA exposed with no safety net. This is why the panic inside the league feels so real, because what we're seeing isn't just a bad stretch or a tough season, it's the cracks in the entire foundation. For years, WNBA executives pushed the same narrative. If people just had more visibility, if they just saw the product, the fans would come, the sponsors would invest, and the league would finally stand tall. And for a brief, shining moment, Caitlin Clark made that dream look possible. Ratings soared, arenas were packed, and it felt like a golden era had finally arrived. But the second she went down, the illusion shattered, exposing that all the momentum, all the hype, all the so-called growth was tied to one player, not the league itself. Disney and Amazon aren't blind to this. They see the numbers, they see the empty arenas, they see the sponsors disappearing. And now, with both giants threatening to scale back or walk away completely, the WNBA is staring down the most dangerous reality of all. Survival is no longer guaranteed. Without Clark and without corporate backing, the league isn't looking at expansion, it's looking at collapse. Every league eventually reaches a crossroads, a moment where hype and slogans aren't enough, where survival depends on more than one superstar carrying the load. For the WNBA, that moment is right now. Disney and Amazon are signaling that the money, the exposure, the lifeline that kept the league alive is not guaranteed anymore. The numbers have spoken. When Clark plays, the WNBA feels unstoppable. But when she's gone, everything collapses. Ratings, ticket sales, sponsorships, even trust. That's not sustainable, and the corporations know it. The harsh truth is, this no league can survive if its future rises and falls on one player. If Disney and Amazon walk away, the illusion of growth vanishes overnight, leaving the WNBA without its biggest partners, without its safety net, and without a clear path forward. Fans believed they were watching the start of a golden era, but unless the league finds a way to build something bigger than Caitlin Clark, history may look back on this moment not as the beginning of success, but as the peak before the fall.